Everyone. Today I'm going to read a little bit of this book, Helping Hands with Hope, and I hope you enjoy it. It's just going to be a little book reading. This is brought to you by Authors R Us. This is Aracely Zeledon's portion, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. And she doesn't know English very well, and so I figured I'd read it for her. I do have a portion of this on Spotify. So, hope to me is seeing something that is not there. A moment in my life that I didn't have hope was when I was in Nicaragua during the war. I saw the dead around me for 13 days. It was the beginning of the Civil War of the 70s. I saw how the young teens were constantly dying and saw the airplanes and tanks in the streets and skies. I remember seeing them and remaining there. I thought we were all going to die. I had my son, who was 3 months old, in my arms and thought we were all going to die when I heard that they were killing all the babies. I was with Pastor Ben Hernandez from Panama, and we were in Esteli. He told us to pray. The sky was clear, and we did not see any rain. We prayed for the rain, and that same day, we all got together to pray. God heard our cry and brought down the water. That gave us enough time to escape. Once the rain came, the bombs stopped for 3 days. All we saw was the tanks in the streets. That moment was was one of the first things I remember feeling hope when there was so much hopelessness around me. We had to leave all our belongings, our house, our relationships. There was such a sense of urgency in that moment to say goodbye. In the middle of a war, no one knew when we would have a chance to escape. We decided to flee within those days. There were about 300 people in a Baptist church in Esteli that were refugees. I was among them along with my family. We we were with some believers and some people that weren't believers. My pastor saw people crying and sad. I remember feeling so scared that didn't know I didn't even remember the exact prayer he did and had us join him in. My husband at the time said that I couldn't leave that place for safety reasons. I remember that within 15 minutes of all of us praying, it started raining. It was a miracle, they said. Once it started raining, the police moved us to the institute, and the National Guard was going to clean the church, and any kids or adults would be killed if they stayed. They were not given time to get we were not given time to get our belongings from our houses, and the babies were starting to die when they were moving us. There wasn't water, milk, or food, and that was causing so many children to die. Once they allowed us to leave, my husband got a truck and we started searching for my family. We started looking for my siblings and my parents. We didn't find them at the house. I thought they were dead, but someone told my husband that they were in another city called Palacogina. My husband at the time decided to look for them to try to take them to El Salvador. When we found them, we all stayed together in El Salvador, but my husband and I went back to Nicaragua. When we returned to Nicaragua, so I could try to finish getting my teaching degree, this is when we went back and thought we could still be there. But the war was still happening. I couldn't finish my studies because of the war. The entire time I tried to finish my studies, my mother, Esther, was caring for my firstborn. We decided to go back to El Salvador since we saw that the war was still going on. This is when we gave up on returning to our home and made plans to come to the United States. In El Salvador, there were no job opportunities since in that country there was also a war going on. On our way to the land of opportunity, there was a lot of there was a lot of challenges, but with God, anything is possible. Since faith was such a predominant thing in my family, I believe that was the key to our success, and also one of the main reasons that I didn't give up. On the way to Texas, my grandfather died. There were some men that were threatening my father and my family, but because of a family friend, we remained safe. That family friend threatened the people who were um, trying to threaten us, since he knew that they weren't from Mexico. We were at Mexico at the time. My sister would get bullied. My grandfather knew that something was not right. And right before he died, I remember hearing him say it wasn't long before he wouldn't get to see his oldest grandson, my oldest brother. Shortly after he said this, he passed. When my husband was in Mexico, where they stole the money from him, and he didn't leave any money for me and our child to make it there. So someone stole his wedding ring as well. After a year had passed, I decided to travel to Texas. Once I was here in the States, I worked as a maid cleaning houses and saved enough money to go back to where my child was. My brother and my parents were there as well. During the years that my son was not around me, it was hard for him to accept that I was his real mother. He would call my mother Mommy instead. He would call and still and he would still call and still refers to her as his mother. Even though he realized later in life that I was the one that gave him life and carried him in my womb, he didn't accept this until years later. My siblings all treated my son like their little brother, and still till this day, when you ask him how he sees his aunt, he says, "You're my sister, not my aunt." It brings tears to my it brings tears to my aunt's eyes when I hear my son as an adult tell his aunt this. I know that even though throughout the pain, sweat, tears, laughs, God still provides joy where there is no place for it to be sowed from. My sisters and brother my sisters and brothers all love him and truly taught, cared for, and grew up with my firstborn. And it is those memories that are locked in his mind. I'm grateful for that. I could be at peace knowing that my family was caring for him and not someone else. Even though sometimes I hear stories that cause me anxiety, I know that there was a plan and purpose in his life in that moment as well. And now he is a pastor in California. Knowing that my youngest brother and my son grew up together as brothers brings me much appreciation for my family. This event makes me remember God's unfavorable mercy. He always places people in your life not only to lead, serve, love, but cause joy during the progress. Once I got to California, this is where we stayed for many years. I still remember the beautiful houses I would clean. I would draw inspiration to keep wanting something better than what I saw in my country. Decorating is one of my greatest passions. I worked as a home interior sales associate for years in California. As my husband and I led people to Christ, we tried to work for God and serve their needs. We were educated and trained by the Wesleyan movement. It was them who sent my husband to Israel, Colombia, and other countries to train and minister. I went to Hawaii, but most of the time remained in California to attend to our flock. Over the years, I look back and think how great and miraculous God is. I still remember the times we didn't have enough milk to feed all the babies, kids, and adults at one point, but our merciful God would create miracles of abundance for all the kids, and still remember filling countless cups with 1 gallon. This was a miracle that just like just like ones that are in the Bible with the loaves of bread. It is moments like that which make me realize how great and mighty my God is. Since I came from humble beginnings, I remain with my hope in Jesus because of what he did for me, and everyone is how I can still stand, speak, and write about a man who gave everything for me. He is the reason I keep my head up high and hands raised. After many years passed, 5 children later, a lot of mistakes, sins, problems, and occurrences caused me and my husband to fail to remain together. One memory I have is praying and asking God, "What is your will?" He responded, "I want to bless you, but not here in California." Our community had grown to 300 members. When we had revivals, we had more than 1,000 people attending. I'm still amazed by the miracles, teachings, and lives we touched in Southern California. Sadly, we divorced in 2003. This was the hardest time in my life. I remember the devil whispering to my ear, "Is this the God you serve? A God who abandons you, and leaves your daughters?" How I would respond is, "Even if my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." This Bible verse is what gives me strength in my darkest moments. During my time in Arkansas, I have seen God's true love. I have seen, experienced, and felt love in a deeper way. When I first came to Arkansas, the first few years, I was under a lot of stress because we had property as well in California, as well as a house in California. We had to sell the house, and at the time, I was paying rent for me and my 4 girls. I had to make sure the house was getting paid as well. Even though I'd cry in the shower so my daughters wouldn't hear my pain, God knows how alone I felt. Those moments are what I remember at times and then think about what He says. When we sow tears with God, He shares His joy, is what I know and believe. I know that I am forever grateful to the men and women of this country that died for our freedom. My oldest son, though he was not born here, served and still serves his country as a Marine, pastor, and community leader in California. Just recently, his youngest son completed his training to be a Marine as well. His oldest son, my first grandson, also enlisted and is set to go to boot camp soon. I am hopeful for the future because I know in whose hands I am in. Death is just the gateway to the eternal world. When you know who Jesus is, you never truly fear death since he defeated it. I know my family still needs me, and God is not done with me or my family, just like he's not done with you. Seek him and what his will is for you. After all the pain, heartbreak, disasters, weddings, births, parties, and just daily events that I have been a part of, I can only say this to you: enjoy life while you have it. You are not alone. You are loved. You are chosen. You are redeemed. You are cherished. You are you. Never forget it.